Hi, Patton and Billy. Thank you so much for joining GI Jobs here today to talk a little bit about Fireside Surf. So, I would love to start with just having you both introduce yourselves and talking about your connection to service.
Bill, go first.
Okay, so I tell people gleefully that before I joined the military, I was a booger-eating moron because I was. And so at age 17, after my second sophomore year in 1983, uh, I knew, and so did everyone around me, that I was not going any further than my second sophomore year if I didn't do something dramatically different. And so for whatever reason, one day in a guidance counselor's office, when my father was there, asked me what I was going to do with my life. I said, I'm going to join the Army. And I joined the infantry and I raised my right hand and I promised that I was going to get a GED. And about 3 weeks into the Army, I realized that I could perform physically pretty well and I was smart enough. And those two things can actually take you pretty far as long as you have a direction. And so I decided that in basic training that I was going to try to get to a place where I could be a Green Beret. And in typical, I told drill sergeants and drill sergeants fashion, said, hey, why don't you just concentrate on getting through basic training, you knucklehead. But when I got my dream sheet, which is the sheet that you use to go to any duty station, I said to the person there, hey, where are the Green Berets? And so they said, Fort Lewis, Washington. I said, okay, that's my first place. And so I actually got my first place. And so I went to an infantry unit in Fort Lewis, Washington. And when I was able, I went to applied for and was accepted for the qualification course for Special Forces. And I graduated Special Forces and I went immediately to First Group Forward, which is in Okinawa, Japan. I got onto a Halo team and was there for 5 years. I went to language school after that in Monterey Bay, California. That was amazing. While I was there, I made like 500 skydives and got a private pilot's license. I left there and went to a scuba detachment went to a Halo detachment in Fort Lewis, Washington, in First Group, and immediately went to scuba school from there. And I spent about 5 years on a scuba detachment. Then I went back for 3 years to teach the manly art of war to other Green Berets at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And I left there as a team sergeant and became the team sergeant for the same Halo team that I served on in Okinawa. And I served there for 2.5 years as the team sergeant. And then I went into a special unit where we did what they call a counter in extremis mission, which is it's combating terrorism. And I was the team sergeant there for about 2.5 years, and I retired. One of the things that I learned when I was in the military was this I fly indoor skydiving thing. They had this top secret thing at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which you could fly in, which a civilian version had become available around 2000, the year 2000. And I thought that that was the coolest thing ever, that there could be a thing where you could fly around in a room and teach people how to skydive. And so uh, I eventually went and built one of those in Seattle, Washington. I fly Seattle indoor skydiving. And my first group of people that we ever flew was good Patton and his team, the Halo team. They flew in our wind tunnel. We became fast friends, and through actually his wife, who Patton said, "Hey, my wife does marketing, and she would probably be pretty great to do a video for you guys." And I said, "Okay." And he told me that she was a wedding. She did like wedding photography, and I was like, "Oh, great!" So I had the total intent of just kind of looking at a video that Christy did and saying, "Well, we're looking for something a little bit different." And so I went in looking at a video of hers on her website with that attitude, and I picked a video at random, And I started watching that, and 2 minutes later, I was crying. It's like, oh my God, this is the best video I've ever seen. I felt totally invested in, the groom giving away, or the father giving away the bride, and all of those things. And it was just, it was an amazing video told through a wordless story. And I thought, oh man, we need to hire her, and we did. And she did some great videos. And from there, probably the best that have ever been done for iFly. And from there, Patton and I thought, we want to do an iFly in Hawaii, where Patton lives. And we looked around for a couple of years in Hawaii, and we couldn't really find a good spot for iFly. And we both love surfing, and surfing is kind of at the core of what we'd love to do if we could do anything that we wanted. And we thought, you know what, we should make a pivot to surfing. And we started looking at different technologies, and CityWave it's a great technology. It has a beautiful wave that you can surround with food and beverage, and so that became Fireside Surf, and we're now almost done with construction. We'll be in business in a couple of months, and it's in Dallas, Texas, and it's going to be amazing. And so that's kind of the story. And Patton, when he and I met, he was in mid-career probably, and that's probably a good segue to kind of tell what Patton's kind of military side is.
Yeah, so in high school for me, I just didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. I grew up in Northeast Indiana, and I knew I wanted three things. I wanted to serve in some capacity. I wanted a good education, and I didn't want to pay for it. And so my dad told me about the military academies and how if you got accepted to the military academies, that'd give me a chance to accomplish all three. And so I was very blessed and fortunate to get accepted to West Point. Went to West Point, graduated there as an infantry officer with an aerospace engineering degree. Originally thought that that I was going to be a pilot. I was a Top Gun baby. It was the first movie I saw in the theater at age 5, and so that was what I was planning to do, was be a fighter pilot or something, and switch over to the Air Force or Marine Corps, Navy, and fly. And but then 9/11 happened my junior year of West Point, and so instead I decided to be an infantry officer. I wanted to be on the ground, taking people by the shoulder, into combat. And so I went infantry. And then, shortly after West Point, after I graduated, I went to Ranger School. At Ranger School, the way I kept myself awake was I knew that my first duty assignment, fortunately, I was just smart enough to get Hawaii as a first duty assignment coming out of West Point. But to keep myself awake, I would build these little stick tiki huts, and I would build the dirt around, and I put the little beverage-based blue powder, to make water. And I would just make these little tiki huts, just thinking if I can just make it through Ranger School, I'll be on the North Shore of Hawaii in a hut if I have to, or living on the beach and enjoying, the Hawaiian lifestyle. And so eventually, graduated Ranger School, went to Hawaii. Instead of spending a lot of time on the beach, I went straight to Afghanistan and then Iraq. But I did live in the Volcom Surf House for about a year on the North Shore on Pipeline, which is where I really fell in love with surfing and the surf culture and the surf lifestyle. So from there, fast forward a few years, I also, went to the Green Berets and did special operations in the Army, and left active duty in 2016 because I'd kind of done almost, pretty much all the things I wanted to do in the military, as far as the challenges that I was trying to pursue. And so 2016, I left active duty. And when I did, that's when I gave Bill a call and said, hey, let's start working on an iFly together in Hawaii. Christy, my wife, had moved there with a one-way ticket and $100 in her pocket, never wanted to leave. I had pulled her away kicking and screaming, and we were gone for 10 years. And she's like, you'll take me back or I'll go back without you. And so we love to fly together in the wind tunnel. After spending time, in the wind tunnel in Seattle, and doing the video with Bill and stuff, Christy and I fell in love with indoor skydiving together as a hobby. And so Hawaii didn't have a tunnel. So we're like, well, we'll just need to create one there. That would be what we do. And so we worked on that for a few years. And like Bill said, this pivot point came where, where there was this opportunity for surf. And we were both like, well, we think surfing is probably like from the perspective of a mechanical wave, it's probably where iFly was 10 to 12 years ago when Bill got involved with iFly. And so we saw a huge opportunity. And at that time, I was working as a commander in the reserves. And so in that command, I got to know Chris King, who worked within our unit. We worked in sister units together. I was in the battalion, he was in the brigade. And I saw his efforts on the logistics side and what he was doing for us, and was just impressed with his efforts. And he was looking at transitioning and retiring this fall. And so when we talked about, hey, what do you want to do next in your career, and what's on the horizon for you, he made the indication to me that he was looking at maybe opening a restaurant and bar. And I said, hey, Chris, like, here's an opportunity for you to get on the ground floor of opening a restaurant and bar, at a critical stage, right? Where we are doing construction, and we're going to be doing all the procurement of the bar equipment, the kitchen equipment, the food and beverage, vendors, those things. And so we were able to work out him coming on board as an intern through the DoD SkillBridge program with us. And so from there, I'll turn it over to Chris so he can introduce himself. But that's how we got to where we are today.
All right. These are good. I started in the Army Reserves and then went to AGR. I've been all on the AGR side of the program, so it's not been but it's still active duty. Done 24 and a half total years this September, and then 21 active. I started in Lubbock, Texas. My original reserve unit was as a logistics, and then moved over to Lake Charles. So I've been East Coast, West Coast, Africa, and luckily I got stationed in Hawaii for my final duty station for a very nice 2-year retreat before I got out. And like Pat said, I was wanting to do an internship, and this looked like a great opportunity, and it has been. I mean, I've learned so much. They've been able to use my knowledge in the logistics side of helping them open, and I've used them for the business side of it.
That's amazing. And it seems like the three of you, with your skills combined, have really just created something that's really special. So you have talked a little bit about Fireside Surf. Can you tell me a little bit more about it and what inspired it, sort of what people can expect when they go, and why Texas? Surfing in the middle of Texas. I mean, you all have sort of touched on your love for Hawaii, but this is popping up in Texas.
Yeah. So I'll start on this one, Bill. So, Bill and I, when we were, we might have to move over there because my battery's dying. I see that. Sorry. We're going to move and talk. So when Bill and I were talking about iFly, and we're really trying to figure out, from the perspective of, hey, what's next, or what other opportunities are there out there? One of the things that became apparent to both of us was that iFly is it's a treadmill for skydiving, right? Or it's a treadmill for people who either they want to learn to skydive or skydive better, or maybe they just want to experience that sensation of free fall without the risk, right? And so in terms of we were like, what else out there doesn't exist that's a treadmill for these other activities, and what else out there could be a similar business model where we can create a treadmill? And so for us, surfing, creating a treadmill for surfing, which is such an aspirational sport and activity, and really a lifestyle activity and a longevity activity, didn't really exist in a way that was compelling for a lot of folks to have accessibility to surfing. And so when we saw the CityWave technology, we're like, man, this is a treadmill for surfing. It takes the entire model of surfing and flips it on its head, right? Like all the traditional barriers to surfing, from just getting to the coast, to finding the right surfboard, to having somebody teach you, to paddling out through the waves, to overcoming in some people's cases, the fear of sharks and reef and big waves and all that stuff, to getting into the lineup, reading a wave, positioning yourself in the right spot, competing for that wave, and then actually catching it before you ever stand up on a surfboard, right? It removes all of that. And you sit on the side of the pool with what we're doing. You sit on the side of the pool, we hold the board for you, you put your feet on, and you immediately go into learning the fun part of surfing, which is standing on a board, right? Like learning board control, learning balance, learning carves and turns. You can do all that before you ever make your way to the ocean. So it just removes all those barriers. And we're like, wow, this is awesome. So as far as Texas, Billy and I, we were not expecting to go to Texas, and this was not our initial plan. The opportunity came to us. When we started talking to City Wave, we built a strong relationship there, and that was really a credit to Billy and him going out and meeting with the Germans and having, great conversations with them and looking at all the sites and stuff that they had. But so we had a really good relationship going because of his efforts. And then we had a broker who is nationwide, who is helping us in Hawaii look for a location for iFly. And our broker was talking to Grandscape, which is the landlord here in North Dallas, Texas, that that we're building with. And Grandscape at the time was looking for a water element for their site. And so they had talked to City Wave and they had talked to our broker, and both of them said, you should talk to Billy and Patton. And so all the stars aligned and they gave us a call and they're like, who the heck are you guys? Because everybody's telling us we should talk to you. And so, that's really how this relationship here was born and how we were able to secure this location, which is an incredible location that, I think is pretty difficult to attain, frankly. So Bill, anything I missed there?
No, just to make sure, just a couple points of clarification. I think that was a beautiful way to put it all. City Wave is the equipment manufacturer. They actually build the pool that we're using, which is basically a beautiful wave in a box. We move about 500,000 gallons of water every couple of minutes, and it creates a beautiful wave. And so that's the manufacturer, City Wave.
City Wave Germany.
City Wave Germany, that's correct. There are two different companies. There's a City Wave USA, not them. City Wave Germany is the ones. And so the second piece is that we take that beautiful wave, which is about the size of a tennis court, and we surround that with really amazing food and beverage. And so we thought that there will be lots of people who want to learn how to surf and who want to have that kind of lifestyle and want to, in a landlocked place, be able to become a really good surfer. And we have that for them. But we believe that in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there's many more multiples of people who will never surf. And they say, I definitely don't want to surf, but watching it would be cool. And we wanted to make sure that we addressed that consumer and that person. And so we've made the food and beverage really special. It's really good. So it's a surf-inspired cuisine from all over the world. And we have our chef, John Frankie. He put together the menu. And he's put together the menu for many wonderful restaurants in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so he did our menu. And our chef, John Shaw, is now steward of that menu. And so we think that we have a really good partnership there. And we think that the food and beverage that we're doing is going to be really well paired with surfing. And people will stay and watch and, eat all the good food that we have. And we've got a pretty eclectic menu, and it's pretty health forward. So we have Wagyu sliders. We have those on like a pit. We have a Buddha bowl, which is like an acai bowl. We have venison tacos. You can take a look at our menu on the website. It is just yummy from top to bottom and unique. And so, I would challenge you to just take a look at that menu.
It
It's
sounds delicious. It sounds delicious. Okay, so a couple rapid fire questions just for veterans who are entrepreneurs who are interested in starting, their own business or, making that transition into the civilian world. What has been the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge for any military personnel who is looking to start anything in the civilian world was to decouple the military language set and gather the language set of civilian business. They are very, very different. They do not communicate in the same manner. Meetings in the military are very, very different than meetings in civilian sector, and you really need to understand the language. And so, I would say, and this is pretty common knowledge, but don't work for money, work for skill, and find a place where you're like, okay, this is the kind of business that I want to be in, and be in that business and immerse yourself in that business at any level, and get to know the language, get to know the culture, start to emulate that language and culture, and then you can bring that into your world and use it to start a business. Yeah.
That's
What
so
about you?
important. That's so important. And Patton or Chris, do you have any advice for veterans interested in starting their own company or getting involved in a startup or a new career path?
It's so the advice. I went pretty full force into entrepreneurship coming out of the military, and I guess the biggest piece of advice is there's no right path. Like everybody looks for the right path and they think, hey, what do I have to do next, or what should I do next? And a lot of times they look at their buddies and see what they've done, whether that's go into like government contracting roles or go into private security, or like things that they think are appropriate for someone coming out of the military. And the reality is the world's your oyster. I mean, there's so many opportunities and so many different things you can do. And when you transition out of the military, it really is a chance to reset and find something you're passionate about and just grab the bull by the horns and go that direction. My path is not the same
Have a
as
long
any path, in terms of like my peers that have gotten out and the direction that I've gone. So I mean, from when I left the military, the first place I started was Goldman Sachs, and then my wife and I decided that wasn't the geographical location we wanted to be in. That wasn't the place we wanted to be. And so we pivoted quickly. I went to Stanford, to an entrepreneurship course with Stanford, and decided that was what I, was more interested in. And that was where more of my passions lie. So you can move very quickly in the civilian world compared to within the military. So there's really no wrong decision. It's just about making one, moving that direction. And then if that direction isn't the right one, refocus. And once you refocus, you realize that as you widen your gaze, like all those other paths are still there and you can get on that path and go that direction. And the civilian world makes that much easier than the military, which somewhat constrains you to a somewhat linear path once you've chosen, your MOS or your skill set. So, and then the other thing I would say is leverage the transition resources that are available, because like the Commit Foundation, and I mean, there's hundreds of veteran service organizations that absolutely provide value for service members and they want to provide value. And the worst thing you can do is not look at those and take advantage of them. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much. And everybody who joined us today, this has been phenomenal. And I know that Fireside Surf is just going to be a smashing success.
right on. Thanks, Kate.